This is Brian for Liberty, and I am recording this podcast on TikTok Live because that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to record it here, I'm going to upload it onto Anchor, and I'm going to get it out there, and then I'll put it up on the YouTube channel. But I'm going to record it here live. That way maybe I'll get some commentary coming in, and that'll be fun for everybody. I have been listening to podcasts for the last couple of days, and I am fascinated, I tell you, by the amount of attention being given to the Trump indictment. And I think that a lot of people would agree that it's kind of big news, of course, but how? Why? What's the story here? I look at the Trump indictment and all I can think to myself is this going to be the end? Is this it? Is this how the United States finally just absolutely comes unwound? Is this how it all falls apart? Because what I see is two sides that are absolutely irreconcilable. We've talked about a soft divorce. We've talked about civil wars. We've heard all these crazy conspiracies and all the different nonsense that's going on in this country. What I can tell you for sure is that you are not a single Trump loyalist, not a single MAGA hat Trump loyalist is going to change their opinion of Donald Trump no matter what comes out in any kind of a trial. Not a single Democrat is all this action against Trump. None of it is changing anybody's mind. And that is a very, very important thing for everybody to bear in mind. I'm not saying this is all just political theater. I'm not saying that Trump isn't guilty. I'm not saying this is all just for show. I'm not saying any of those things. What I am saying is that nobody's mind is going to be changed by what is going on with Donald Trump. So what I see is, what I'm looking at is what are the possible outcomes here in 2024? What is it that could possibly happen, good, bad, or otherwise? And I don't see anything positive here. I don't see anything positive. Look, let's say, I think the only positive thing, the only good outcome, the only possible good outcome could potentially be charges being dismissed, some kind of a plea bargain being made, Trump deciding not to run in 2024, and then maybe you get a Republican candidate, you have a good clean race. I don't think that's going to happen. What I think is actually going to happen is I think these indictments are going to there's going to be a trial. Nothing's going to stop this from happening. This is going to continue to move forward. And I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a trial. You're going to have all the stuff going on. You're going to have it going on during an election cycle. Both parties are going to run on it. And the vitriol, what you saw at the end of the 2020 race, what you saw with January 6th and what you saw in the Summer of Love, I think that is nothing. I think that is going to be, we're going to have fond memories of what was going on in this country in 2020. In that summer, as we were watching cities across the countries burn, I think we're going to have fond memories of that. I think things are going to be far, far worse at the end of the 2024 race. And I don't think it matters who wins or loses. I really don't. I think that if Trump is not indicted, he's already indicted. If Trump is on the ballot in all 50 states, runs and wins, there's no scenario. I don't think there's any scenario where the left takes that sitting down. I don't think there's any scenario where we're not going to have coast-to-coast violence. And the media is not going to call it an insurrection. That's exactly what it's going to be. I don't think the left takes that laying down. I think that there's going to be actual attempts to disqualify Donald Trump from taking the White House if he wins. I think there's going to be legal actions being taken under the 14th Amendment to try and prevent him from taking the seat, even if he wins the White House. And I think that is going to be incredibly, incredibly dangerous. If Trump loses, but the Democrats have somehow taken him off the ballot in a couple of states, watch out. What do you think it's going to look like if Donald Trump is not allowed to run in multiple states or even a couple of swing states? And then he loses. There's not an argument to be made there at that point when it comes to a stolen election. There's not going to be. You're not going to convince a single Republican that Trump didn't deserve to be on. The best possible outcome, really, of what's going on with Donald Trump is that he doesn't win the primary. And right now, I don't see anybody in the Republican field even challenging him in the primary. He's going to be the Republican nominee. This person facing these charges is going to be the nominee for the Republican Party for President of the United States. And right now, I'm looking at this story over here. And now this is the Daily Mail. And one thing I've learned about the Daily Mail is they are pretty biased. But that's okay. I don't know that this is complete garbage. But it's Trump and Biden are locked in I think I got this story up here. Trump and Biden are locked in a dead heat for president in 2024. New poll shows, as ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos says, it's shocking because of all of Donald Trump's baggage. There's a couple of things that are going on here. First is this guy's been indicted. There's a mugshot out there, right? And he's going to win the nomination, and he's in a dead heat right now. He's in a dead heat, according to this poll anyway. And realistically speaking, if he's even within a couple of points of Donald Trump, of Joe Biden, that's got to be somewhat embarrassing for the Democrats. It's got to be kind of worrisome, because here's the deal: if these indictments turn out to be paper thin. Now, look, if you're listening to right wing, Republican podcasts, and that's what you're listening to, Ben Shapiro and whatever, that's that argument. You're going to hear that these indictments are garbage and blah, 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 blah. If you're listening to the other side, if you're listening to Sam Cedar and some of the guys on the left, they're talking about how serious these charges are. He's going to jail and so on and so forth, right? Set that aside for just a second. Let's say these indictments, we move forward. These things are going to be tried not just in the court. And these things were going to be public and have nonstop publicity anyway. But these things are really going to get forced out in a way and examined in a way by the media on your TV every single day in a way that they better be rock solid. And I don't think they are. I've read, now look, I'm not a lawyer, but I've skimmed the indictments. Skinned? I've skimmed the indictments. And I'm just saying, I don't think that these things are, I don't think there's enough in these indictments. I think that once they are really being vetted in the public, I've said this before, I think this whole thing hurts the Democrats. I think the Democrats are going to suffer greatly because of their decision to do this. Now, I've argued with people who said it doesn't matter, political consequences be damned, this is the right thing to do. And I think that comes a little bit from, there's a little partisanship there, and that comes from a little bit of, I don't like Republicans. At the end of the day, when I look at the indictments and I look at, we're literally considering throwing a former president off the ballot and declaring him ineligible to run for president of the United States. That's a dangerous game. And I look at the indictments and I go, there's not enough there. And on the flip side of that I would say, and this comes down to is this whataboutism? And, Trump did this thing. It doesn't matter what the other people did. You got to prosecute. We are sending hundreds of billions. They're sending all this money to Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars, whatever we've already sent over there for Ukraine. The president of the United States right now is compromised. I mean, it's hard to make an argument that Joe Biden is not compromised in some way. He's on tape saying he got the Burisma thing is not I feel like it gets pushed under the rug a little bit. But the Burisma thing is no joke. I mean, he's on camera bragging about getting this prosecutor fired who was investigating a place where his son worked. This is it's right out there. And I feel like going after Trump through the legal system, through the Department of Justice, man, I don't know. I'm not one of these, this is it. This is the end of America. It's going to be the collapse. But I'm saying, what's the peaceful way out? I'm asking that question. What is the peaceful way out of this situation? How do we back our way out of this? Like I said, Trump wins. The left is not going to take that laying down. They're going to lose their freaking minds. I think you have riots coast to coast. Trump gets taken off the ballot in a couple of states and loses. I don't think that this to me is almost more scary. And I'm probably more afraid of conservatives and Republicans getting out and rioting and being violent than I am of the left, because I think once the right does it, it's a different kind of, this is not me saying that the right is worse than the left. This is me saying that the right is less likely to do it, to actually get violent in a way that we saw in 2020. It's not within character. They're the law and order people. It's not in the character of the right writ large to get out and do those kinds of things. So what I worry about when it comes to Trump and potential riots in 2024 with conservatives actually getting out on the street, I'm saying that once the right crosses that line, writ large, nationwide, and when I say nationwide, I'm talking 50,000 people in a couple dozen cities, 100,000 people in a couple. I think that's when a lot of people who happen to lean that direction move in unison, and that scares me. Then we're talking actual conflict in the street. I think that's what scares me. That's what worries me. I don't see with the indictment and everything else that's going on. I don't see a peaceful way out of this. Now, let me set that aside for a minute. For those of you who've been here since the beginning, I just want to say one of the things that bothers me the most about this whole thing is I'm trying to remember the last time we had a presidential race where we literally talked about economic issues and the American people. When was the last time we've seen ourselves walk through an election where the majority of the conversation was based around economic solutions to problems facing the average American person? When was the last time we had a truly serious conversation about healthcare in this country? I would say the Obama race, and not his first one. I don't think we talked about healthcare a lot during his. I don't even know if we did that during the race. I know that what was it his first couple of years, we were trying to force ACA or something like that down. But when was the last time we actually sat around and said, we need to address America's problems? I've said this a million times. I'll say it a million times again. Politicians don't want to talk about problems because they don't have solutions. And this is where it gets the rhetoric. If you don't have anything to run on, if you're not running on actual solutions, or even healthcare can't be fixed without regulating drug makers is the comment I just got, and that is, I don't even know how to respond to that. The amount of regulations surrounding healthcare are so numerous and so many, you can't even it's inconceivable how overregulated the healthcare industry is. But that's a conversation for another day. I shouldn't let the comment section distract me too much. But let me just, we haven't had a conversation around these issues. It's been forever since we've had a real conversation about how to solve any of these problems. And so when you're not having that conversation, when you don't have anything of substance to run on, you're not running on anything substantive, like, this is my campaign, these are the issues that I want to attack, these are the issues that I want to fix, this is the problem that the American people are facing, this is my pathway to make that better. And then that forces the other side to have an alternative idea and to argue for another solution. And now we're having a conversation around solutions when neither party wants to do that. Neither party is doing that. Neither party wants to have a conversation about those things. Well, then all they have is rhetoric. All they have is vitriol. So it's got to get worse and worse and worse. It's got to be, I've got to make him, look, I don't care what anybody thinks about Donald Trump. I don't care. I didn't vote for him in either race. I won't vote for him in 2024. I've said it on the last live stream. I'm happy with what he did when it comes to the Supreme Court. I have to give kudos to but I'm a I lean to the right. I'm more conservative. I don't believe in substantive due process. I think the Supreme Court's doing good things. I'm happy with the conservative court, and I know a lot of people disagree with me. They're called Democrats. We're entitled to have different opinions. But I am happy with what he did with the Supreme Court, but I'm not going to vote for him again. I don't believe I certainly don't put him in some messianic role like a lot of people on the far right do. I don't think he's certainly not the devil that the media made him out to be. And I think therein lies the problem, right? They never gave him, he was always the worst possible person you could put in that office. And that was the left's message throughout his campaign and the entire time that he was in office. they had to alter things that he had to say. They had to chop up clips of him speaking to make it seem like he was saying different things. They did everything that he was public enemy number one of major media outlets. And that's how the campaign was ran. And so now we're in this place where, well, what are you going to do next? We got to take it to the next level. We got to keep escalating. We can't dial it back. We've got to escalate these things, right? So if you get a Republican in the White House, particularly if somehow Trump wins the race and manages to get into the White House, which I don't think it happens. I don't think Trump wins and gets into I don't know if they convince imagine, but let me finish that thought. Imagine Trump wins and gets into the White House. What's the next step? Well, the next step is he's going to come after Biden and Clinton. Right? We're going to get We're going to get the investigation we wanted on those emails. We're going to get the investigation we wanted on Burisma. You're going to get everything you asked for. Now the right's locking up their political enemies. We're going down this road to like absolute 100% banana republic. We jail our enemies. We lock up the people we disagree with. That's the road we're on. That's the path we're going down. And it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter which side of the political aisle that you're on. That's the issue that we're facing. And that's the issue that we're not talking about. We have to stop this train. Right? And I don't know how that gets done. I don't think that certainly doesn't get done with Trump getting into the White House. First of all, like I said, so let me go back to where the other tangent I was getting to run down was, let's assume Trump wins. So Trump wins in 2024, and they decide, and the electors don't place him. And let's say Biden and the Democrats are successful at what the Republicans failed at, which is getting the electors to not vote for Trump, to not seat him, to not validate the result, or they get the Congress to not validate the result. I don't think they'll do it because there's a majority of Republicans right now in the House, but let's say that we get the electors to turn and say, yeah, no, we agree that under the 14th Amendment, he wasn't qualified to run in the first place. So Trump wins the election and they don't seat him and the electors don't vote for him. What do you think that does to the country? I don't see a way out. And I'm not one of these, stock up on food and, guns and butter and all that stuff. And here it comes and this is the end. But I don't see the way out. I don't see it. And I don't see a candidate in the field right now. I don't think that you're not going to see a challenge of any substance to Joe Biden from the Democrats. I don't think that unless Jill's got COVID, maybe Joe gets it. Maybe they lock him up, say he's too sick to run. I don't know. And they plop Gavin Newsom or somebody else in there. But I don't see any serious alternatives to Joe Biden popping up, and outside of I don't see a serious contender on the Republican side who's going to take. Trump's got an enormous lead. I mean, it's not competitive on the Republican side, so it's going to be these two guys, and I don't see a peaceful way out with these two guys running, not in the current environment. So let's shift gears a little bit and ask, what can we do? What can the average, ordinary citizen do? I've always been a big fan of the just disengage to the greatest possible extent. Build. I want to know what businesses. Let's say one of the things that I've been hearing is that we're going to get a new set of lockdowns. We're getting a new set of COVID restrictions, mask mandates, lockdowns. All those kinds of things are coming. I want to know what businesses in my area are not going to participate. I want to know that my local government is not going to participate. I want my state to start a slow, gentle divorce from the federal government. I'm not looking for secession. I'm not looking to say, let's not have another civil war or any of that kind of nonsense. What I'm saying is, look, we're going to get our own budget in order in this state so that we don't need federal money anymore. And we're going to move federal agencies out of our state. And we're going to start isolating. We really need, I believe this, and I sincerely believe this, that what we really need in this country is a return to some form of actual federalism, where we are getting to a place where states are governing themselves. I live in South Carolina, and in North Carolina, there's a congressman. I'm looking for I'm trying to see if I have the story up here. But in North Carolina, there's a congressman who is talking about. Thanks, Mitch. I appreciate the like. There's a congressman who is talking about withholding federal money from North Carolina. First of all, this is a guy who was elected to represent North Carolina, and he's talking about withholding North Carolina federal funds from his own state because they have legalized marijuana. If they don't enforce the federal laws, they're going to withhold this federal money. People don't understand what federal money is. The federal government is just printing this money essentially out of nowhere. They're just creating money out of thin air and then using it to get people in the individual states addicted to this money. When your state government fights against like an expansion of Medicaid, or is it Medicare? I don't know, the state versus the federal. But when they fight against the expansion of that program within your state, what they're doing is trying to not get too many people in your state hooked on federal money, so that your state can maintain some level of independence from the state. Thanks. Yeah, it's Medicaid at the state level. So we always hear about Medicaid expansion. This is a form of federal money making its way into your state. So now we can expand this program, get more people in your state in need of this money, dependent upon this money, so that if you don't do what the federal government says you should be doing, they'll take this money away and you'll lose the election. This is how the federal government has used its ability to simply print money to take over control of the individual states. It's insane that we've allowed this to happen. And it's not just federal. It's not just the Medicaid money. It's highway funds. It's educational dollars. All this money that if you're not doing what the federal government tells you to do, they're going to take this money away. And we all know that once that money's coming in, it's needed. We're dependent upon it. So yeah, and so what you have is these state programs that have grown to a point where the state budgets cannot maintain them anymore. They need the federal dollars, or they're going to have to kick people off this program. So what happens? You got all these people on these programs that are being funded by the federal government. Now I'm a governor, and I'm like, look, the federal government is in trouble. We got to start isolating ourselves financially. We got to get our house in order. We got to get some of these bad regulations that are stopping us from having economic growth and economic success. We got to get these programs, and we got to govern ourselves. And so as a governor, as a state house, we're going to say, we're going to do these things. Well, the next day, the next thing you're going to hear is we're going to lose all this federal money, which is going to be an end to these programs. Well, everybody who's on that program is done. You've lost all their votes because you can't kick people off of Medicaid. You can't kick people off of SNAP. You can't reduce funding for public education. And the problem is, I'm like I said, I'm a big fan of federalism. I think the states should be governing themselves. But the problem is these states your state politicians are no more, they're no better than the guys in Washington, D.C. So your state budget's a mess. They have plenty of money, but they're incredibly wasteful with it. And so they need the federal dollars because, heaven forbid, they have to get their house in order and start being responsible with the tax money at the state level. So it's this cycle of kind of like serfdom at the state level. The state governments are serfs to the federal government. It's really, I'm going to dox myself here, but I live near, I live near Greenville, South Carolina, and Greenville County just built a brand new building. It's like a $68 million government building. It makes me furious every day I drive by it. It's on my way to work. It's on a piece of relatively prime real estate. It's a huge glass building with a brand new parking garage next to it. It's an incredibly beautiful, fancy, expensive building. And as I drive by it, I think every day, my wife and I are fostering a child right now. And every day I drive by it, all I can think of is when we went to get this young man out of the foster building, the place where they house these kids. It's this dingy, dirty, rundown building. You've got suitcases with like names on them and little cubbies. It's the saddest. It's really one of the saddest things you could possibly think of. And so every day I drive by this $68 million building with a brand new parking garage. And I just think to myself, this is the era we're living in. We're in this feudalistic Like the political class are the lords and ladies of old, where they're building palaces to themselves, and us commoners, us people out here working in the fields and pushing the papers, and we pay our tributes to the local lords and ladies while they build these palaces, and we're struggling to. I mean, it's oh my God, it's just makes me sick. And so at the state level, we're not any better. So everybody's as corrupt, and it falls into this whole tribalistic issue that we've got in this country of red team, blue team, and yeah, my guy sucks, but he's better than your guy, so I'm going to keep voting for him. But the real way out of this is a return to actual federalism. It's some level of independence at the state level that gets, yeah. So so as politics becomes more local, and you have less and less federal control over what's going on, you'll have people paying more attention, right? People pay more attention, whether they know it or not. They should be paying way more attention to what's going on in their city than what's going on in their state, and more attention to what's going on in their state than what's going on at the federal level. Our attention, right, is opposite. And here's the thing. This kills me. This cracks me up. Not only is our attention span backwards, our tax system is backwards. Now, hear me out. Why do I pay 28% of my income, 30% of my income, whatever it is, in federal income tax, right? But then I pay 8% to my state. The way this should work, first of all, let me just give my little libertarian plug, all taxation is stuff. I know people disagree, whatever, we can talk about it. But at the end of the day, if we're going to pay an income tax, if I'm going to pay 28%, the bigger portion of money, right? The biggest portion of money should be going to my local government, where I have the most control over it, right? And then it should go less as I move out. For those of you who are listening to this on my podcast, you can't see it, but I'm really doing some great animation here. So why are we sending the lion's share of our tax money off to the federal government and only having pennies left over for our local governments? Right? How well funded would your educational system be if your state had the money that the federal government was getting? I would think pretty freaking good. And look, at the federal level, let's not kid ourselves. Where's all this trillions and trillions of dollars going into the federal government, and what are we getting in return? I mean, really, what are we getting in return? $1 trillion a year, at least, in defense spending. The amount of money that we're wasting, that we're throwing away, it's hundreds of billions of dollars going to the Ukraine. I mean, but that money, you send it so far away that you don't really have any control of it anymore. And so that's a real issue with the way that we're taxed. And so that's how we're governed. So now when we have these races, look, when the midterm elections happen, people don't show up. The midterm elections have a much lower voter turnout than do presidential elections. There shouldn't be that. You should be every bit as passionate in the midterms, because the government that is closest to you is the government that should have the most power over you. But we've diverted people's attention away towards the federal government and away from local things, because local government gets you talking to your neighbor, right? Town hall meetings get you talking to each other. Town hall meetings make your politicians accountable to you, and we've just been taught to not do that anymore. We don't hold our local officials accountable anymore, and so we're not in this situation where we have this control that we should be having. So it doesn't really matter. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what side of the political aisle you sit on. The first thing we should do, the first thing we need to do, is to bring as much control back to the state level as we possibly can. That's the first step to solving this problem. The first step to it's not that we won't have Donald Trumps and Joe Bidens in the future. It's that if we can get enough control over our government back to the state level and reduce the scope and power of the federal government, it doesn't matter. And I don't care who the president is. These people shouldn't have the power that they have over us. So that's the thing. And I've said it before. I'll say it again. We're running this. We've got this race going with Trump being indicted and all this. And I'm just asking if anybody's listening here, why don't you throw in the comment section, tell me what you think. What is the peaceful way out of this Trump indictment? I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know how you run an election in 2024 and have and have a peaceful way out. I just don't see it. And I think that's dangerous. I think it's scary stuff. So that's my spiel on that stuff. What else do we got going on here? Oh, here's something. So, oh my God, I don't understand what in the world is going on here all right. So I talked a little bit earlier about Hunter Biden, and I only brought it up. Oh, I'm glitching here in my what I'm seeing here. So I don't know what it looks like to you folks, but it doesn't look great here. Maybe should I turn it off, turn it back on? I don't know what the feed looks like. But anyway, federal prosecutors, let me bring this story up here real quick. Let's see. Come on, get over here. There we go. Federal prosecutors plan to indict Hunter Biden by the end of the month. Bombshell court filing says president's son likely to face gun charges that could land him in prison for up to 10 years. What in the world are we doing? Gun charges? Like, who cares? Like, of all the things they could do with Hunter Biden, it's gun charges. That's what they're going for. Federal prosecutors plan to indict Hunter Biden on charges by the end of the month. Like there's not enough other stuff. There's not a better, if you're going to do it, right? And for me, that's the peaceful way out of this Trump indictment thing. Can we go after the Bidens? Can we do the actual investigation on Burisma and some of this corruption and the big guy and what did Joe Biden know? How involved was he with Hunter's overseas dealings with the Ukraine? The fact that his son has obvious ties to the Ukraine, the fact that Joe Biden was involved in the inner workings of the Ukrainian government, and now we're essentially fighting a proxy war with Russia through the Ukraine. I mean, this should be getting a ton of attention. Look, I don't care. They could throw Donald Trump in jail for the rest of his life. I could care less. I'm saying that I guess the peaceful way out of this is, all right, listen, I can trust my Department of Justice, and we're going to punish all of these wrongdoers. And so here come the indictments, and here comes the investigations, and we're going after both sides with both barrels, and we're doing this the right way. I know that sounds a little bit like whataboutism, but that's not what I'm saying is that, I guess it's whataboutism, but at the end of the day, if I want to make sure that everybody, all of my politicians, all of my political leaders are being held accountable for the things that they're doing. So, and I feel like there's plenty there, right? There's plenty of smoke to launch a real substantive investigation into the Bidens and their ties with the Ukraine, that kind of investigation, that kind of move by the Department of Justice would probably give cover and say, look, we're doing the right thing. I look at this Department of Justice going after Donald Trump right now as unbalanced enough that I just don't see. I just don't think it's going to go well. I guess that's. I just don't think it's going to go well. I don't know what else to hit on. I know it's only been 30 minutes. I really just got home, decided to jump on here, do a quick live. I want to thank everybody who's been hanging out with me for a minute. This is going to go up on the podcast, more as an experiment than anything else. It's going to go up on the YouTube channel because this has been recorded. Thanks for the commentary, Mitch, Tom. Thanks you guys for sticking around. Next time I'm going to do this, probably maybe open it up for a multi-guest, see if we can get a couple people on here to chat. Then we can stretch this thing out a little bit more. But otherwise, thank you all for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time.